They were interviewing the head of NASA, and they were asking him about why China is sending rovers out to the dark side of the moon. And he was like, let them do it. We don't care what's back there.
Well, the moon itself is an enigma. Shouldn't be.
Right, of course.
Shouldn't be where it is. The orbit of the moon is unlike any other orbit, and there is geologic evidence to suggest there was a time where we had oceans and no moon, and the tides were huge. I mean, we're talking like 400-foot waves that were coming in and just decimating land. And there are stories, and there are indigenous traditions and biblical passages that talk about when there was no moon and how things changed when the moon occurred. Now, that's not science. They're stories.
What do you think's on the moon?
Well, I just want to say, now both countries are broke, but there are other countries that are not. India is sending Shiva 1 to the moon, and China, and neither one of those countries agreed to non-disclosure. And China has actually said, and this is, I mean, you can't make this up. I keep saying this. China has said when they land their craft on the lunar surface, they will broadcast to the world what they see. So here's the thing. We sent craft looking for microbes and bacterial forms of life. When those craft landed next to archaeological remnants that are over 50,000 years old.
On the moon.
On the moon, on the lunar surface. And when China sends those images back, my sense, and I don't have an inside track any longer, my sense is that we're going to see structures that are there. And I've seen photographs of the structures. They all the way back to the Clementine missions that were, through freedom of information, had to be released in I think it was 1990. They had to be released. And they did, and they pixelated out all of the archaeological structures. And some of them are towers, some of them are long, elongated archaeological structures. So look at the irony. Here we are looking for microbes landing next to temples on the lunar surface.
Yeah.
Now think about what this means. Here we are, we're on a planet on the verge of global war because we believe our differences are so great that we must hurt one another to solve those differences. What would it mean for a space probe from Earth to land on the lunar surface and find these archaeological remnants and find that they're not from aliens from another world, but they're from us from another time? And I think when they send those images and you see the glyphs on those temple walls, we'll know exactly what they say because they will be in our root languages. Cuneiform, Hebrew, Sanskrit, and Arabic are the four root languages that I think you'll see when those come back. Would that be enough for us to look at one another as nations and say, my God, look at the great and beautiful things that we did when we worked together a long time ago in the past. What could we achieve if we came together right now? What could we give to our children? And what could we give to our future if we work together instead of destroying ourselves? Something like that could be the catalyst.
You see, there was something that came out in NASA a couple weeks ago, I think it was maybe even a month ago, where they discovered caves, like deep caverns
I
on
saw
the
that.
moon.
Yeah, they've already found it. It's already, I mean, this stuff, we've had the images. And I think it's one of the reasons commercially we didn't go back, because it causes a lot of problems.
And then what about the dark side? Like, there was also something that came out where they were interviewing, I think it was in front of Congress maybe, but they were interviewing the head of NASA, and they were asking him about why China is sending rovers out to the dark side of the moon. And he was like, let them do it. We don't care what's back there.
Well, the moon itself is an enigma. Shouldn't be.
Right, of course.
Shouldn't be where it is. The orbit of the moon is unlike any other orbit of any moon around any planet in our solar system. The multiples, the dimensions, the geometry of the moon, the number of moons between Earth and the sun, the number of moons between Earth and the moon, these are very precise. They're integer multiples. This doesn't happen in nature. All the other planets in our solar system, moons typically orbit around the equator. Ours is offset just enough to give us the gravity to stabilize our ocean tides. And there is geologic evidence to suggest there was a time where we had oceans and no moon, and the tides were huge. I mean, we're talking like 400-foot waves that were coming in and just decimating land. And there are stories, and there are indigenous traditions and biblical passages that talk about when there was no moon and how things changed when the moon occurred. Now, that's not science, they're stories.
Right.
But the geology does suggest they found evidence of these massive tides at a time when it's believed the moon didn't exist. The question is the moon a natural moon? Is it artificial, or is it a natural moon that was captured in our orbit from a catastrophic event in our solar system? And all big questions, you know, to be answered.
What other ancient texts or anything that you've looked into, or ancient religious cults have talked about this DNA, this merging of the DNA telomeres, other than like, and how does, I know like the what exactly does it say in the Sumerian tablets and those myths?
Yeah, this is why I want to go back to Sitchin. I think Sitchin, I have a lot of respect for Zechariah Sitchin. I think he was a brilliant man. I think he was a good scholar. And he pretty much single-handedly brought to the mainstream. I mean, there have always been linguists behind the scenes, but through his series of books, The 12th Planet was probably the one that people read the most. That brought that to light. I didn't and continue to not agree with his interpretation. His interpretation is that we are here because we were made to be slaves.
Right.
My sense from what I have read and what I understand in the ancient traditions, the people I've talked to, and in the texts, we put them all together, is I think very possibly we have been enslaved at a time in our past. I don't think it's the reason we're created. Yeah, and there's a whole story we can get into. Maybe another podcast we can talk about that. So I don't think it's the reason we were created, and he believed that was the reason we were created.
Yeah, it's one of the most interesting, crazy, like sci-fi stories that's out there. Is the story of the Anunnaki coming down and creating us to basically be a slave species to terraform the planet, and then they started breeding with us, and they somehow wanted us to mine gold.
Well, that was his interpretation. You know, the
put in the atmosphere.
Biblical interpretation is that we were deceived into coming to this world rather than this planet. We were deceived into coming into this realm of matter and three-dimensionality, and that is a form of evil. Is the deception of the angels. This is the biblical perspective. That were deceived into coming to the earth realm and captured in matter in three-dimensional bodies and led to believe that there is no other realm. That's another interpretation. And you go back far enough, and all of the traditions that I've seen, they all say that we're the product of an intentional act. You go into the Mayan cultures and they talk about the multiple iterations of what it took to create the first humans and how we were created. You go into the Apocrypha and the Gnostic texts, and what's really interesting is they never say God created, and even the original biblical text doesn't say that God created humans. It says Elohim, and Elohim is a plural. So multiple beings created humans. And when you go into the Apocrypha, the texts that were left out by the church, the first time didn't work. Multiple iterations of humans had to be created to hold the power of the soul in the three-dimensional world. So another way of saying that is multiple iterations of DNA had to be tested to hold the sound or the frequency, as the antenna to tune us into where we are multiple iterations. Eve was not the first woman that was created. And I think we probably have biblical scholars that may have talked to Lilith, according to text, was the first female that was created from at the same time that Adam, the first human, the first man. But because they were created at the same time, they were like brother and sister.
Right.
And they weren't drawn to one another. It was when Eve was created, and I wasn't there, I just imagine, I'll channel. Adam said, thank God, because his beautiful woman appeared, and he didn't feel that it was his kin, his sibling. He felt, and they were able to be as man and woman.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that all of the entire Bible, there's no evidence of anything in the Bible prior to the Hellenistic period. It all came after the Hellenistic era, which is fascinating. And there's literally during the 3rd century BC and up to the 2nd century BC is when all these biblical characters started to get written about. Like, for example, Moses. There was 24 versions of Moses that were written about in the Hellenistic area that were preserved in the Library of Alexandria. And then after this is when we start to get this biblical narrative to come forth. So it's interesting. And also when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the weird things about that is it's mostly Hebrew, right? There's Hebrew, there's Aramaic, there's Greek.
Greek, right.
But there's no other Hebrew language anywhere in antiquity.
Well, a couple things. First of all, we don't even know where the scrolls came from. They have been attributed to the Essenes, who were a mysterious sect that showed up 500 years before the time of Jesus of Nazareth, who did not even call themselves Essenes. The Egyptians called them therapeutae because they knew how to heal. And Jesus and his mother and her mother were all of the Essene lineage. So he was raised in the lineage that understood healing. The scrolls now, they were found in Qumran, but now they're doing DNA studies, and the parchment that they're on some of it didn't come from the Middle East. So now the question is, were the scrolls created somewhere else and brought to Qumran intact? Or was the parchment created somewhere else, brought to Qumran, and then the scrolls were transcribed from the other documents by the Essenes, and we don't know the answer to that right now.
Right.
For our viewers, the reason the scrolls are so powerful, and again, you can't make this up, this is all 20th century. 46, 47-ish, right around there, the scrolls were found, the oldest records of the Old Testament unedited by the church. 45, the oldest records of the New Testament, and the Gnostic texts were found in Egypt, in Nag Hammadi, a little village, they're called the Nag Hammadi Library. And these are the lost Gospels that the church edited during the 4th century. So now we've got the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, very controversial. Gospel of Sophia, where the women in the Bible, they were there, right. And there were Gnostic women. Some of the female, there's a text called Thunder Perfect Mind. What a powerful text written by a Gnostic woman. So within just a few years of the mid-20th century, we had the oldest records of the Old Testament, the oldest records of the New Testament, and the books that had been edited out. 43 books had been edited by the church in the 4th century. And we had a complete view. And then you begin to see why the church omitted some of the text, because it destroys the narrative that has been preserved through what we call the Bible. Now, I think the Bible is a good book. Is it complete? No.
Right. It's not.
Is it selective? Yes.
Right. Yeah, one of the interesting things about the Bible is like the way we look at religion today is vastly different than the way people looked at religion in antiquity, right? We look at like some folks like to look at religion as like hard fact and science, right? As if like that's what they live by. I mean, it's one thing to look at it that way, and then it's another thing to look at it as like a tradition or a mythology, something that upholds values for you and your community. Like back then, there was like religions weren't exclusive. Like Yahwism, all these other religions were just like people embraced all of them.
Well, and they do. When I'm in the Middle East, we before October 7th of 23, we were leading groups into the Holy Lands that include Israel, include the surrounding areas. And we would go into cities and villages where people of all faiths, they worked in the same restaurants, they lived together, they're neighbors, they're friends. The Arabs observe all the Jewish holidays, the Jews observe all the Arab holidays, which means they get a lot of days off during the year. Their kids play together and they know how to live together. It wasn't a problem for them. Right. A lot of people, when we have this conversation, they will acknowledge the Bible is incomplete, and they interpret that as the divine inspiration that led the church to create the Bible as it is, because this is the way it's supposed to be. This is what they'll say it was. And it's and there are a lot of ways to interpret, what that is. But this is one of the overarching themes. And again, this was the War Scroll that says we are, until the end of this cycle, that we are in this fundamental battle between good and evil. And that the way that we triumph is by embracing the truth of who we are. That's it. And you can read whatever words you want to read into that, whether you want to talk about biology or you talk about the word divinity.
Right.
So what we're invited to do is live the best version of ourselves.
Was that War Scroll? What year was that one discovered? Was
40,
that one?
40,
that was 40. Okay, that was
so
the first batch.
in cave number 1 were the first 7 scrolls that were discovered, and they were some of the most intact. The Isaiah scroll is the one that's the most intact. And if you go to Jerusalem today, just outside of Jerusalem, there's a museum called the Shrine of the Book Museum. Have you been there before?
No.
Oh, this is amazing. So the museum on the outside is a white structure that is made to look like a large version of the top of one of the vases, one of the clay vases. Steve, you can probably bring up Shrine of the Book Museum, if you would, please, and I want to show you something on here.
Cool.
When you go inside, the central part of the inside of the Shrine of the Book, there it is right there. Oh, okay, so there's the outside.
Oh, cool.
So that's the top, and then there's a black obelisk next to it. Can you see if it shows the black obelisk next to it? There,
that thing right there.
Lower, yeah, there it is right there. This is the symbol between the sons of darkness and the sons of light. That black obelisk represents the sons of darkness. The white represents the sons of light.
Interesting.
The first 7 scrolls are housed in this museum.
Oh, really?
And then what you're seeing in the center, Steve, you could enlarge that upper left. Oh, now it's right in the middle. Yeah, right there. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing behind the scenes. What you're seeing here is this is made to look like a Torah scroll. And what you're seeing on display is the Isaiah scroll, most intact. It's wrapped all the way around. And that whole structure is designed in the event of a nuclear attack. The belief is that the information on the great Isaiah scroll will be the foundation of the new civilization that emerges from the destruction, and it must be preserved at all costs. So this entire structure is designed to drop underground into a vault, and the lid is a concrete and steel lid that comes over it to preserve the great Isaiah scroll in the event of a nuclear attack for the emerging remnant afterward to have all the information they need to build the new civilization. That's how important the Isaiah scroll is believed to be. Isn't that amazing?
That's insane.
Yeah.
And this is where again?
This is in the Shrine of the Book Museum, just outside of Jerusalem. And then the other scrolls are in the displays that you see around. But that's the Isaiah scroll that you're seeing right now.
What is the significance? What's in the Isaiah scroll? Have you read it?
Oh, yeah. Well, my Hebrew is not the best. My biblical Hebrew, I've read the English translations of it. In 23, there was a new exhibit inside of here, and the only scroll that has ever been found of the book of Genesis. The original Genesis was found. And at that time, it was not in good shape. It was still rolled, and they couldn't unroll all of it without damaging it. So we now have technology. They can see what's in it without actually breaking it. But that's there's so much. The scrolls are important for a number of reasons. They're important certainly for the Jewish people in terms of their tradition, but humankind in general, because it's in those first 5 books of the Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, that mathematicians and statisticians were able to load them into the computer back in the 90s and run search algorithms called ELS, electronic skip sequences.
Right.
Or letter sequences. And what they found when they do that mathematically is beyond random, beyond chance. Statistically, what they're finding is meaningful information encoded in number underlying the letters of only these first 5 books. They tried it with other books and it doesn't work. So there's something very special about those first 5 books, a deeper meaning below the letters that we read on the page. Every ancient alphabet, bar none, has always had a number that represents the letter. The science of that is called gematria, and it's not numerology. Numerology is a loose subset that doesn't follow the rules. In the 2nd century, there was a book, the 32 rabbinical rules were laid out in the 2nd century, determining how gematria can be used as a science. And I've spent a lot of time with this. I've got the software, run the algorithms, and you can't fake this stuff. I mean, everything that has happened in the past is encoded into that document. They did the original. Are you familiar with this? Have you had guests talk about this? Okay, so
roughly, vaguely.
Everything from all the great wars are in there. The countries that entered the wars, the years they entered, who their leaders were, the year the war was over, what year the leaders. I mean, the assassination of Kennedy, election of Obama, Trump. I mean, everything is encoded, and the text says that it will be. Everything that was, is, or will be is until the end of time. Not the end of the world, but the end of time is encoded into that text. Doesn't predict what will happen.
Right.
It indicates consequences and outcomes. It's almost as if we were given a map of quantum possibilities so that we can query. But I want to just share the really good news that I've seen from this. During the Cold War, I queried, and I was studying this during the Cold War, right at the end of the Cold War. Cold War was over 89 and 90, and it was in the early 90s. It was the first time that Michael Drosnin wrote the book called The Bible Code. It was the first time with the Hebrew mathematicians. And if you query atomic holocaust, that only comes up twice in the code, and the years for both of those we've already passed. So it suggests that I'm not going to say you won't see a limited exchange. I think you may see a tactical nuke on the battlefield somewhere, but I don't think we're going to see mushroom clouds all over the horizon like they show in the movies. It showed 1983. 83 was the last year, according to the Torah codes, the Bible codes, that the word atomic holocaust comes up, and it says, this is called the Torah codes, or the Bible codes. It's commonly the Bible codes, but it's actually the Torah that's being the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Who
was the guy who first wrote about this?
Are you familiar with the Bible? I mean, I won't be redundant.
I'm not familiar with what. No, okay, I've never heard of this before.
Okay. Well, I apologize. Okay, so let's start over. 1990, mid 1990s, a man named Michael Drosnin.
Michael Drosnin, that's the name.
Wrote a book called The Bible Codes.
Right.
And it was based on the work of Eli. There's a statistical mathematician who had published in a peer-reviewed journal an article about what are called electronic letter sequences, ELS sequences. And so here's what put it on the map. In the Torah codes, it said that the prime minister, his name was Yitzhak Rabin, would be assassinated at a certain time on a certain date by a man with a very precise name. They took this information to Yitzhak Rabin and said, look, if you do this speech on this day, 3,000-year-old book says you're gonna be killed. So maybe you want to rethink. And he said, no, if it's in the Torah, it must be true. He went and gave his speech, and he was killed on the day, at the location, at the time of day, and the man's name was Amir, A-M-I-R, and that was all in the Torah codes. And that's what put it on the map. They said, how could this book have predicted that this was going to happen? So then the statisticians, they said, well, what if he hadn't? What if he had postponed? So they ran the query, that he talked on another day. And the Torah codes came back and it said assassination delayed, indicating it still would have happened, but it would have happened at maybe another time. This goes back about 400 years. Rabbis have always said that there are hidden codes in the Torah. They didn't have computers. They tried to figure it out by hand, and it's said by candlelight and lantern lights, and it said that they went crazy trying to do this. So when computers came into vogue in the 90s, those same rabbis said, well, let's do this on a computer. So the idea, this is gematria. Every letter of every ancient alphabet has always had a mysterious number associated with it. We don't know where they came from. They never change, always consistent. If you the study of Kabbalah, people know this. They often use the numbers and letters interchangeably in Kabbalah or Kabbalah. So they took the Torah and converted the letters into their equivalent numeric representations and loaded that into the computers as an array.
Okay.
All right. And then you can tell the computer, beginning with a certain letter, you can do what's called a skip code. You can say, if a skip code is 10, you start with a letter, and then you go 10, and then 10 letters down, and then that's the next code, and then 10 letters down, and that's the next. And what you find is an entire word. So, for example, in the book of Genesis, the first T that you find, and I believe it's a skip code of 10, is O, skip code of 10 R, skip code of 10 H, and it actually says Torah. And they said, okay, well, what else is in there? So that's what makes you crazy doing it by hand. So what they did was a computer, and you can determine what it can be a skip code of 50 or a skip code. Actually, the Torah may be a skip code of 50. I may have just done that wrong. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, and I haven't done it for a while. You can determine the skip code, and what it will do, it will search horizontally, it'll search vertically, and it'll search at a diagonal.
Okay.
There you go, Rise. You're reading my mind. So you can see how these skip codes work.
Okay.
The key is it has to be entered in Hebrew. You have to enter the query in Hebrew. So Harold Gans was a CIA analyst who wanted to debunk this. So he said, let me do my...
Harold Gans.
G-A-N-S. He said, let me do my experiment. And there was a very famous experiment that he did where they entered the name of, I believe it was 32 rabbis. And they said, let's see if these 32 rabbis are in there. Well, not only were they in there, their birth dates were in there, the date of their death was in there, the location where they lived in the world, their city was in there. It exceeded what the analysts thought. He was going to debunk it. Now he's one of the strongest supporters of what was happening. So it's controversial. A lot of people don't believe it. It's a mystery. How could these things happen? Well, This opens the door to another conversation that we can't have today. But the conversation is if we are living in a simulation. I think you've probably had guests on that have talked about virtual realities and us living in the simulation. Have you had a guest talk about that? If we are living in a virtual simulation, it makes sense that we would have a map of all the potentials within our simulation until the end of the cycle. And that's what is believed that the Torah codes were given to the people of the earth 3,000 years ago as a map of potentials. When we make a choice, these are what you can expect as the outcome until the end, not the end of the world, but the end of time. The end of time is the end of the cycle. And then we begin a new cycle.
Are you familiar with Christopher Dunn?
I don't get out much. So
he wrote a book I think his first book was in the late 80s maybe, called the Giza Power Plant. I
remember that book. I don't know the name, but I do remember that book.
Yeah, he's an engineer.
Yeah.
He comes from aerospace.
Sure.
And when he first saw the pyramids, he thought, there's no way this is a tomb. He's like,
oh, no.
He reverse engineered it, and he says, this is a functional machine. And he's revamped his theory and added on to it recently. And his newest book is called the Tesla Connection. It's like part 2.
Yeah.
And his idea is that the Great Pyramid, is a solid state electron harvester that harvests electrons deep within the earth. And he's even had like NASA scientists that have backed up his ideas with how those stones in there can help with the electron flow through the earth. And how, all those shafts and everything in there, they don't make sense. It's like that thing had to have some sort of crazy function to it.
Well, it is based on such universal principles that it has many functions for that very reason, because of its harmonic relationship to the earth, to the energy on the earth, to the cosmos, encoded into the pyramid, the dimensions. I mean, it's directly in the middle of all the landmass of the planet. You probably know all the stats that go with this. I was there in 1986. I had.
Oh wow!
I was in Egypt, and they gave permission at that time. They've never done this since. In the Great Pyramid, to take a core sample from one of the casing stones, because the question is, how did they build this thing? How'd they get the stones up 430 feet, And what they found was so controversial. It was published in the engineering journals. Not a lot of people want to talk about it because at that time, a lot of New Age, the harmonic convergence was happening, a lot of New Age stuff. People were talking about crystals, lasers, vibration, all of which is possible. But the evidence doesn't support any of that. What the evidence shows is that core sample in natural light, the casing stones, the outer stones were removed, mined to be used in buildings and mosques in Cairo. And there's only a couple of them left. They were beautiful, polished marble, white. So what we see today was never meant to be seen by the naked eye. It is sandstone or limestone. Natural limestone, as a geologist, I can tell you, will have laminations because of the way it was deposited. It will have microfossils, tiny microbial forms of life, some kind of shell, something in there. And what they found in the core samples was none of that. What they found was it was completely homogeneous. There were insects, air bubbles, and human hair that they found in this core sample.
Really?
What they now believe is that they were built, whoever built these used the technology that we're only starting to use today. And they took the natural stone, pulverized it, mixed it with a matrix of an epoxy, and poured the stones in place to get the high tolerances, less than a thousandth of an inch between the stones. And to get the materials up high, they poured the stone and it dried in place. And now they think the same thing happened in Peru at places like Ollantaytambo, Machu Picchu, the Coricancha, things like that. And it's a very different way of looking at the technology. But if that's the case, it's more advanced